Hey, I've got a question for you real quick. Do you recognize this video?
Why don't we meet our Pink Windmill Kids?
Hi, my name's Katrina.
I can probably just stop the clip right there because I'm sure Katrina's smiling face was enough to jog your memory of this viral meme. Most remixes just focused on the first 30 seconds of the video where these British kids excitedly introduce themselves to the audience. And watching the whole 2.5 minutes only reveals how much more their intensity grows. It's kind of astonishing. I mean, the choreography feels like high school show choir, but on crack. Each kid gives 120%, belting out the lyrics as they leap across random fields of grass. By the end, everyone's throwing their fists in the air, visibly sweating, while the kids in the audience join along with a range of overstimulated enthusiasm to complete confusion. It's another viral video with plenty of small funny moments to spot each time you rewatch it. But I feel like people are missing out on a lot of important context to this clip. The video is called Emu's Pink Windmill Kids Can't Stop the Music, and this references the show that this clip is originally from, Emu's all-live Pink Windmill Show. Premiering on July 13th, 1984, this was a British family-friendly variety show with musical numbers, game show challenges, and live viewer call-ins. And oh man, if you thought this brief musical number was a bit overwhelming with all of its chaotic aspects, you haven't watched an episode of this show. Thankfully, the same channel that uploaded the original clip has tirelessly archived tons of Pink Windmill Show content, so let's just go through the first episode together so that you can see what I mean. Whoa, who are we cheering for? As we'll come to learn later, this is Rod and Emu, our hosts for the Pink Windmill Show. Rod explains that in universe, kids across England have discovered where the Pink Windmill is, and so now they've decided to broadcast live from their home and interact directly with the audience. But as Rod tries to introduce us to one of the cameramen, we get our first warning of a very violent pattern of behavior when it comes to his emu sidekick.
What will you do if Grot Bags comes down?
I just love this because as someone who took a lot of video production classes in school, I can tell this introverted man is actually one of the show's cameramen and he just seems so uncomfortable with the bit. So after that violent outburst, Rod decides to take Emu out to the child audience, and what do you think happens next? He attacks again!
You don't have to worry that he likes you, Alexander. Stop it.
Then Rod harasses the crowd a bit more before squeezing himself right in the middle of the audience. Of course, that's when he introduces the kids that we know and love.
Why don't we meet our Pink Windmill Kids?
Hi, my name's Katrina.
But right after that, we flash to this strange green woman who is actually the character Grot Bags that Rod mentioned earlier when Emu assaulted that man. She's the cartoonish villain of the show who hates children and goes around insulting basically anyone in her path.
Why don't you switch it off now?
She also has a robot henchman named Robot Redford, but he's not actually a mischievous underling or anything. He has this oddly endearing, sassy rapport with her and doesn't care about any of her schemes.
Do you understand, you sardine can? Oh!
The segment ends with Grot Bags deciding to go pay the Pink Windmill a visit, but Debbie cuts it off to introduce the first audience interaction portion of the show.
Play our fabulous new game called Emu Spin.
Rod explains that for this game, the crew has randomly selected from a batch of letters a few kids to call on the show, and if they answer a trivia question correctly, they'll get to spin Emu's wheel for a chance to win amazing prizes like this high-tech pocket radio. Even better, if you land on the north, south, east, or west marker, you'll get to win the star prize, star prize, star prize. It's a bike. No! So Sarah goes to call the first contestant, a 12-year-old girl named Karen, and okay, right from the start, Rod is very anxious about getting this call going.
It's us actually doing it, isn't it? You do it, you press the button.
Yeah.
Hurry up, because it's lovely.
And then like a few seconds into the call, everything goes wrong. The line just dies or something, and a good 30 seconds of dead air goes by as Rod frantically tries to remedy the situation while Sarah just watches helplessly.
It's... nothing's happening.
No.
You sure? And that was a nice time to find out nothing's happening. We're in the middle of doing the show.
It's so awkward. No one's really laughing or responding, and Rod's anxiety is just boiling over, which is going to be a common theme throughout this episode. Again, as someone who did behind-the-scenes work for the morning announcements in middle school, I know everyone's feelings in this situation too well. In the end, it turns out Sarah just didn't know how to dial the phone. Like, you have to pick it up and wait for the tone before you start dialing. At this point, I can't tell what's crowd work and what's actually Rod's genuine anxiety about the technical difficulties.
That's working. Shan't be a minute, viewers.
So Rod picks up the phone and Sarah starts dialing, but she messes it up again somehow.
You've done it again! Hang on. No, don't... Sarah?
I'm sweating. Sarah seems so terrified. While Sarah is dialing, Rod explains the premise of the game again, and the phone still doesn't work.
And if the answer's right, we'll be phoning you up here on the show, live, if we ever get through.
I know I'm only showing you clips of this going down, but you have to watch the full 2 minutes. It's nerve-wracking. Oppenheimer has nothing on the Pink Windmill show, I swear.
And the next part of the show, it can't go wrong this time. It's our Pink Windmill post office.
So by the end, Rod just gives up. He finally declares defeat, and the entire Emu Sping segment goes on without having anything happen in it. But don't worry, this next segment can't go wrong. It just can't. It won't go wrong. Did you know that Katrina is Rod Hall's stepdaughter in real life? Yeah, we'll get into the Rod lore later, but right now, it's time to read some letters sent to the Pink Windmill. And Joe is apparently the heartthrob of the show.
Here's one for you, Joe. It's from a girl.
Katrina shares about a letter from a Boy Scouts group asking if Rod and Emu would come camp with their troop for the day. And the guy actually did it, although his micromanaging tendencies start to show again when he's directing the kids.
That's it. Look at it. It's taking off.
Oh, and Emu's violence returns as well. Then Rod tries to sing a song with the kids at the campfire, but I don't think he really knows the words. Okay, well, I don't know what that was, but let's head back to Joe and Katrina.
If you're writing, don't bother asking for Katrina's autograph, because she can't write. Anyway.
I legitimately almost spit all over my computer screen. Why did he say that? I don't know what's going on with the Pink Windmill group, but everybody is hitting their wits' ends and they are falling apart fast. So let's hope that we just move to another pre-recorded dance number or maybe do a segment with grot bags. They're doing the phone again! Thankfully, Karen is actually on the phone this time, and Sarah asks her how many flat surfaces are on a cube. Rod tries to help her by telling her to look at one in her larder, which is a British word for cupboard. But why would you have a cube in your cupboard? Wouldn't you have, like, plates and cups, which are round?
Look at one in your larder.
There's just so much nervous energy radiating off this man, I can't.
Are you liking the show?
Yeah,
Pardon?
yeah,
What did you say?
yeah.
Yes.
Why does he keep doing this? I mean, you can just infer that she said yes to his question, and even if she didn't, just say, oh, that's great, and move on instead of making this awkward pause. He's so earnest. He tries so hard. Rod was not made for live television. He just acts like a very anxious old man all the time. Anyway, we finally move on, and it looks like there's somebody at the door. Grotbags and Redford are back to inject some life into the show. Redford is still vibing in the background as Grotbags berates a live audience of children. The two of them go and select 3 kids from the audience to take part in a game show that we'll get to later, but now it's time for Emu Spin Quiz. Again, and Sarah has now been replaced. Luckily, everything goes normally this time, and we then move on to a segment of the show called Boggle's Kingdom, which follows Rod's medieval ancestor, Boggle. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited.
Been up since ever so cock-a-doodle. Yeah, it's nearly 11 at the clock, you know.
I don't care.
Their relationship is in shambles. Apparently, Boggle's sister has gotten a letter that their royal coach has been repaired, but Boggle can't ride in it until he pays a bill of 45 ducats, which they have the money for, but she just doesn't give it to him because she hates him. So Boggle goes to the village to find a way to earn money. I've got to be honest, I'm struggling to understand what's happening in this part because Rod is doing this very strange voice and has this way of delivering his lines where it takes 10 times longer than it should.
Certainly is. I haven't got the feeling, you know, Johnny. I thought I had the idea, you know, Johnny. You know, had the idea.
Anyway, Boggle and his peasant friend come up with the idea to use his cart like a bus service and earn the money for Boggle's cart by charging their passengers. But instead of getting like a horse and buggy, Boggle and the peasant just push it around themselves. So one long buggy segment later, Boggle finally has enough money to pay for the carriage, and his sister is still mad at him for some reason, even though he earned it all on his own. Well, either way, I guess the storyline wrapped up, until the sister takes Boggle's bus and gets into a car accident with the coachman. And And then the segment ends with the sister having to pay an even larger bill for the broken carriage, and Boggle's just like, well, you made me pay my own bill, so screw you. Okay, well, now it's time for Grotty's Grotto, where Redford explains to the 3 child contestants that they get to choose from 1 of 5 cauldrons, which have paper slips explaining which prizes are inside. At the same time, Grotbags will offer them a prize up front, so they can either do the safe thing and take her prize, or risk it for the chance to win a lovely prize or a booby prize.
It might be a booby prize, because she's a bit like that, you know.
Redford calls over Dennis to be the first contestant, and he already seems a little unsure about this whole thing, which is going to be a running theme for the next minute or so.
Pick a number. Hurry up, Dennis!
Dennis picks Cauldron 3 and brings it over to Redford and Grotbags. She offers him a wicked thriller LP, along with a model airplane and an emu chew. I don't know if I'd ingest anything related to that bird. But throughout all this, Dennis is just too overwhelmed to really say anything, and honestly, I don't blame him.
Come on, I haven't got much to give away today. Come on, what is it? What would you like?
Finally, after the audience starts shouting out decisions and Dennis chooses the cauldron, it's revealed that the cauldron prize was a scrubbing brush.
You've won a scrubbing brush!
All that build-up and it's all for nothing! He gets some consolation prizes though, so don't feel too bad for our good lad Dennis. 2 other girls compete on this segment, but it follows basically the same pattern as Dennis in that they are all equally uncomfortable and mildly frightened by Redford and Grotbags shouting in their faces. At least they won some nice prizes. Oh, and we're back with the chaotic duo! Luckily, it goes to a pre-recorded song by Rod and the Pink Windmill Kids, which wraps up the episode. But even in the last moments before this conclusion, you can hear the muffled scrambling of Rod and the crew as they try to turn off the live audio and switch to the music video.
Look down there and you'll see the pictures.
What a great way to end. There's just something really interesting to me about the way this live format unfolds when it comes to a children's show, because I don't remember any kids shows that were broadcasted live growing up. They all had a very curated and scripted feeling to them that in the lower quality shows felt annoyingly fake as a kid. To me, children's media has always had such specific standards to live up to. Nothing can be boring or a bad influence or else will ruin the minds of the next generation. It's almost like a unique break from the formula when it comes to the disorganized chaos of Emu's all-live Pink Windmill show. It's really entertaining. So I know I said only the first episode at the beginning, but let's watch just one more. We've got time. Not that emu again. We're barely a minute in and he already can't be contained. Rod decides to go over to the cameraman again, who is equally as uncomfortable as the guy in the last episode, and I think someone legit screams from the audience when the emu grabs his butt.
Yeah, that's a bit. Now leave him alone.
Then as Rod interacts with the child audience, one of the girls there is visibly terrified of Emu. I don't know how this is supposed to be a lovable children's mascot, which it actually never was created with the purpose of becoming a children's character. But again, we'll save the Rod lore for later. Anyway, the Windmill Kids sing a song about building a wall to keep Grotbags out. They even get the kids in the audience to join in on their unpaid labor. It's fine, a very British sounding song, but for some reason it all falls apart at the end once Hugh's PTSD kicks in and Rod crashes through the wall. I did like how someone in the comments mentioned that Sarah gets noticeably angrier than all the other kids when Rod knocks down the wall. They all do a pretend anger kind of thing, but you can hear Sarah shouting above everyone else. There's just such a livid rage coming out of her during that moment. Also, I just noticed that Joe gets completely wiped out as well. Anyway, it's time for some more Grotbags and Redford content. Heck yeah! Their dynamic gets even better in this episode, and Redford is just purely screwing around at this point. I don't know why it's so entertaining. I could watch a whole show with just these two, but now they're headed to attack the Pink Windmill.
Oh, she's got no chance.
Okay, I know I joked about Hugh's PTSD earlier, but this is starting to get concerning. Actually, Sarah is here to transition us to Emu's spin, so maybe she was just getting traumatic memories from the last time she had to run the segment.
Sarah?
And Rod literally has 2 phones installed this time in case something goes wrong. I think it's safe to say the technical difficulties really affected everyone on the crew. Today's star prize is a sweet record player, and Hugh comes over to make the call for the first contestant.
We're going to ask you a simple question. I don't like this silence at the moment from you, Hugh.
Tensions are already running high. Luckily, Hugh will be spared today since the girl picks up pretty quickly and answers the question right, winning her the star prize record player. Although, Rod still feels the need to add a weird, awkward comment at the end.
So you can boogie, 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 as they say, all the way down to the aisles. Hey, my hair, all that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
His anxious energy has to get out somehow. Anyway, it's time to move on to the Pink Windmill post office. And I've got to admit, the theme music for this intro kinda slaps. Apparently, someone thinks it's really good because the theme song randomly attacks during the middle of Katrina's sentence.
Yes, I love this envelope, whoever it was. It's beautiful, bright colours.
And the pattern of Joe getting the weirdest letters continues as he reads one asking what color Grotbags' underwear is and if she changes them every day. Okay. But then we transition to a video of Rod and the Pink Windmill Kids visiting a school for handicapped children, and it's honestly a wholesome segment, save for Emu's sporadic acts of violence. Speaking of violence, Grotbags has made her way to the Pink Windmill. Oh, and Redford's here too. So everything pretty quickly falls to chaos.
Come on, Miss Lily.
What? Why does he wait for the kids to cheer him on? I think I'll come back to this later when we talk about Rod's questionable relationships with women. But for now, we're at the 80s, a different time. You couldn't get away with this stuff today. Wait, I didn't even notice in all the chaos that Redford's helmet falls clear off. Everything is just getting worse as this segment goes on.
How would you like your vertical hold? Horizontal! Ha!
Then we get like a Grotbags vertigo shot? What is going on? It's not supposed to be this disorienting with Grotbags and Redford. Maybe because Rod and Emu are included, they just project a cursed aura that makes everyone go insane. Finally, the segment ends once Grotbags and Redford select their 3 contestants for Grotty's Grotto, and they look genuinely terrified when we return. But there's no time to worry about them because it's time for another round of Emu Spin. And for the star prize, they've just decided to recycle the bike from the last episode since no one won it. Debbie's here to introduce us to our next contestant.
What have you got? You found somebody?
Yes, we've got Lucy Gottrey of Exeter.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay, so I initially watched these episodes with my sister before I decided to revisit them for a YouTube video, and this next segment was so awful that I remembered Lucy's name, and just hearing it made my heart stop. If you thought them trying to get a hold of Karen in the last episode was bad, just watch this. So it starts with Rod making awkward small talk for a good 40 seconds, and he shows off the consolation prize, which is a Pink Windmill t-shirt, but then he lets the intrusive thoughts win and decides to have Emu throw it onto the camera. As he runs to wipe it on the camera lens, you can hear the crew genuinely laughing, probably because they have no idea what's going on.
Shan't be a minute. Pardon?
And all the while, the phone is still ringing, and Rod's true anxiety is breaking through his kid show persona once again.
I bet there's nobody in. There isn't.
Finally, somebody picks up the phone, but it's clearly the voice of an adult woman, and she sounds oddly confused, like she wasn't actually trying to participate in the Pink Windmill show. It takes Rod 20 seconds just to communicate that he wants to speak to Lucy, but it seems like the woman on the phone doesn't recognize Rod, so she's just perplexed as to why a grown man wants to speak to her 7-year-old daughter.
Well, you see, that's what we want, yeah.
Rod, you're not helping yourself look less creepy. The way Debbie's smile disappears as he says that. He finally starts explaining what the Pink Windmill is and why he's calling for Lucy, except now the woman says she can't even hear him. The crew is left to awkwardly laugh as all this unfolds. Rod tries to walk forward for some reason, maybe to help the signal, but he just steps too far into the microphone and causes terrible feedback.
Oh my God.
Rod manages to get through to the woman and explain that he's calling her from the Pink Windmill show, so she finally leaves to get Lucy. His patience is wearing thin. The show then just turns into a middle-aged man shouting on the phone for a good 10 seconds before Lucy picks up, and everything's going fine until...
This is Rod and Emu, and we've got your letter.
Anyway, Debbie asks Lucy what cartoon dog has a friend named Woodstock. It takes Lucy an unreasonably long time to answer, you get the drill. Luckily, she gets Snoopy and wins a painting set. That took 4 minutes. It took 4 whole minutes just to ask this girl a question. And now we have to sit through another episode of Boggle's Kingdom? Isn't this episode great? Aren't you thankful that I decided to include this in the video? I'm glad I included it. And look, I'm not trying to rag on Rod here or act like he's so dumb. There's a reason I've never done a live stream on my channel, and it's probably because I'd end up acting just as nervous as he does. Anyway, Boggle's sister, who is apparently named Hortensia, is abusing him again, and she's forcing him to clean the house so that they can be ready for a visit from their cousin, Prince Porley. He rolls into the joint after like 2 minutes of pointless shenanigans, and the most interesting part of this segment is the boom mic creeping into the shot. For some reason, Hortensia tries to escort Porley out of the window, and obviously it goes wrong. As Hortensia takes Porley away, Boggle schemes with his peasant friend John to go fishing with the lads, and John comes up with a plan to scare Porley out of the castle so that Boggle won't be busy attending to him. We transition to that night, where we get a 30-second segment of Boggle just talking to himself.
Beat me at snakes and ladders. It's stopping me from going to the... It's stopping me from going to the mad street. If it was very hard on the boat to pick up the mad street. If it was...
I think I'm going insane. So Porley just barges in and kicks Boggle out of his room because he thinks it's better, but Boggle warns him that John said it's haunted. The next 2 minutes are a fever dream. Boggle, John, Hortensia, and Porley all simultaneously become ghosts and run around wearing bed sheets. They scare Porley away, then there's a real ghost just walking around the castle.
Oh, he's very good, isn't he? You can see right through that one. Yes, he's just walked straight to the wall.
And the episode ends there. What? Sarah, are you okay? We're back for another game show segment with Grotbags and Redford, who seem to have recovered from the chaos of their previous appearance in this episode. Everything actually goes perfectly fine, so now I have no content to make. Looks like you've escaped my wrath for now, Pink Windmill Show. Episode 2 is basically over at that point, although Rod has to bring up the disastrous phone call with Lucy one more time.
But of course we run out of time again. I think it was having that long chat to Lucy in Exeter that did it.
Pardon? Speaking of Rod, who is he? I think we've all just easily accepted that this quirky British man in a shiny pink tuxedo is the owner of a violent and deranged wild emu. I mean, for anyone who's not acquainted with him, he's a pretty unique children's show host, and he seems to be a somewhat famous mascot within British pop culture. Well, if you feel pressed for more information, you've come to the right nerd, because I just watched a 50-minute documentary produced by Channel 4 about Rod Hall's entire career. I have dived so deep into this show, and I didn't even grow up on it. Rod's work as a performer started from his childhood, as he used humor as a way to build up his self-confidence and gain friends. After marrying his wife Sandra, the two moved from England to Australia in the 1960s, where he worked as a comedic actor on Channel 9, even being a recurring actor on the popular Tonight Show hosted by Don Lane. Apparently, he often used his celebrity status to up his game with women in showbiz as well, which... he was married. Of course, Rod's discovery of an old emu puppet changed the path of his career, causing him to return to England and perform in the Royal Variety Show for literally Queen Elizabeth in 1972. But as he continued to rack up a number of performances on variety shows, his marriage with Sandra was silently falling apart. Once Rod met Cher Hilton, despite the both of them being married, he became intent on pursuing her romantically, and one day abruptly admitted to Sandra that he didn't want to raise a family anymore before the two separated. While obviously the way that they pursued each other was really messed up, Cher as a wife was more career-focused and a better complement to Rod's skyrocketing career as Rod and Emu. He got his own children's show on the BBC and quickly became a public celebrity, but according to Cher, he was a naturally reserved person who would have rather spent his time writing comedy scripts than performing every single day. And as he started to become more famous for his Emu act, a slow, burning hatred developed within him for the puppet that had forced him into a one-trick performer. During a pivotal appearance on a British talk show called Parkinson, Rod secretly resented the fact that the producers forced him to go on as Rod and Emu instead of just Rod Hall, so he decided to immediately rip up the script and destroy the set. I mean, it's easy to interpret Rod's performances as Emu as him venting his inner rage and letting a darker side to his personality show. I can just imagine him spitefully saying, "Fine, you want more Emu? I'll give you more emu. Anyway, Rod's family with Cher grew as he climbed to stardom status, even gaining some prominence in America after appearing on the Johnny Carson show in 1985. From some of the Pink Windmill cast member interviews shown in the documentary, it seems like he didn't adjust too well to the sudden fame, being simultaneously too introverted to enjoy all the public attention, but at the same time getting a bit of an ego and even using his status to flirt with other women. Later, in 1987, Rod bought an Elizabethan mansion in Rochester. Unfortunately, while he had been earning big at the time of purchase, his show on ITV was suddenly cancelled and there was an economic recession, leaving him unable to afford the house and unable to sell it. While he tried his best to scrape up enough money by performing at different live variety shows, he was declared bankrupt in 1994, and Cher decided to take the kids and leave him for Australia. It was a decision that a lot of the interviewees harshly criticized in the documentary, but I think both Rod and Cher knew that their relationship was more based on Rod's successful career than true, faithful love, considering that he never honored the sanctity of their marriage and flirted with whoever he pleased. I mean, it's a situation where neither person did the right thing, but it shows that when all you have to offer women is your fame and success rather than faithful affection, you can't expect them to be faithful to you when the money dries up. He was forced to live in a small cottage, but did find some sense of community with the people there and kind of returned to a normal life before his fame, which seems to have benefited him as he became more content with what he had rather than chasing stardom. Still, Rod forced himself to continue performing the emu act, although he left his puppet at home as many chances as he could get. While he seemingly was able to find some happiness in living a quieter life once again, reconnecting with friends and family, his life was unfortunately cut short on March 17, 1999, when he tried to adjust the TV antenna on his roof and accidentally fell, dying on impact. He ended his life pretty much penniless and had faded from the spotlight. His career really did come with a lot more trials than you might assume from watching any of the shows from the Pink Windmill franchise. His out-of-the-ordinary act with a psychotic emu puppet was an unpredicted success, yet at the same time having to perform the same act over and over left him feeling unfulfilled, and strained his relationships with women as well as money. I think it's an interesting look into the dark side of fame in the entertainment industry, because it's not like Rod went crazy doing drugs or was involved in a bunch of scandals like you see in the tabloids. He was kind of an average guy within showbiz who kept a pleasant face but internally struggled with how to handle his fame, and it led not to an explosive downfall but a quiet and abrupt exit from entertainment that brought him back to his humble beginnings, which in some ways gave him a happier life than he ever had being a pop culture icon. Rod Hull's personal life is just as unpredictable as his TV persona. He's such a unique children's show host to me because he defies all the archetypes that you associate with those mascots. He never specifically set out to create a children's media empire around Rod and Emu, unlike someone auditioning for Barney or the Wiggles. And unlike those characters, he was able to genuinely entertain people of all ages and had the prestige of performing for, again, literally Queen Elizabeth. Additionally, while Rod couldn't really escape the popularity of Emu, the public still knew who he was and what his personality was like. You know, most people don't know the name of the puppeteer behind Elmo or the actor who plays Arthur. The only people I can think of off the top of my head that had the same public recognition as Rod would be Fred Rogers and maybe Martin and Chris Pratt of the Kratt Brothers. Now that I think about it, the Kratt Brothers had a similarly chaotic TV presence as Rod. Maybe I should make a video about them next.
We're out on the Caribbean Sea looking for sharks.
Rod, Emu, and the Pink Windmill Show are all like no children's show I've seen before. They give off a sort of awkward, chaotic, confused, and yet endearing vibe that makes for a surprisingly entertaining show. While the episodes we watched today were rough, Emu's all-live Pink Windmill Show did gain its bearings by season 2 and shed most of the awkward moments, although it still isn't afraid to throw in chaos every now and then.
My lovely bat. Campbell, my musical director!
It's home to a very interesting figure in British entertainment, and it makes for a great viral video, which I hope after this, you can never watch the same way again. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Can't go wrong. All you need is a song.